السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله وصحبه أجمعين. So we're second to last lecture in this series for this semester. Last time we met during, was that Islam Awareness Week? Islam Awareness Week. And we tried to look at how scholars look and benefit from some of the ahadith and some of the ayat in the Quran. So, and we kind of got a small taste of that. Okay.
Evening.
Here we go. Weight gaining on the horizon. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. This is also random or?
No, this was the same person.
Same. Oh, I mean the YOLO.
You couldn't make it today.
This is the YOLO.
Oh yeah, YOLO.
Same person. Good. All right. So we went over. We spoke about the first few weeks about different stories of individuals who we don't know their name, but they're very well known with Allah Azza wa Jal and with the angels and with the righteous people who have passed before us, perhaps, because of certain things that they stood up for, certain sacrifices that they've made in their lives, and we went over a long range of that, whether that was being unjust or being just, being looking at avoiding people who are oppressive, political schemes, donating money, visiting, friendships, things like that. We looked at all of those, and then we mentioned about the Prophet Adam, alayhi salam, peace and blessings be upon him, and what we could benefit from it. Not necessarily how the origin of his creation and how he was taken from the different scoops of earth, and that's what was used to create his body and whatnot. Not necessarily that part, but the part that we looked at was his time, a brief period of his time on earth, actually. And from that we learned a few things, like one, where did he and Hawa land on earth when they were sent down from paradise? What did we say? Yes.
Weren't they put in like different locations? I think Hawat was in Mecca and Adam was in India.
Right. Well, India's got to be right. No, here's the thing. We mentioned different scholars' opinions, but we said there's actually no evidence to support any of those statements. They're just guesses. And some of them said that they united at Jabal Arafah, at in Hajj, where Mount Arafah, ta'arruf, to know each other. Again, these are nice, Romeo Juliet-esque kind of themes, if you will, but we don't have any evidence for any of that. Or in that case, because Adam and Eve, predate them, so you would say Adam and Eve-esque, but that wouldn't really work. So we don't have any evidence behind that. That's why I asked that. Certain things you might hear a scholar mentioning it, he's mentioning it, it is what it is. Does it change our religion? It doesn't change anything. Does that mean we should go and propose to our loved one on Arafah and say, this is the place where my great, super great, to the umpteenth million time proposed to, and he reunited, this is where I like to do it? You see, this is kind of these people and these sisters like, wow, it would be so beautiful. And it wouldn't be, actually, because you should be focused on Hajj and Umrah when you go to those places. Nonetheless, so we also said how many births did Hawa give? How many times did she give birth? What did you say?
23 pairs? I forgot.
Why the 3?
23 pairs. There was a pair.
20.
20 pairs.
I don't know where the 3 came from. Sure, maybe for an extra few. But so 20 seems to be the most popular opinion in our aqidah and our creed. There is one narration where it mentions 120, just so you're all aware. And that's quite the process right there. If you thought 20 was hard, try the 120.
120 pairs or 120 children?
120 births, meaning 240 kids. In the other case, it would be 40 kids at 20 births, mashallah. So, for those sisters who are like one and done, 2 and through, 3 and I'm free, and all this other business they keep calling, you got a long way to go before you want to do the cutoff. Your great, super great grandmother, set the standard. So you got a long way to go. Nonetheless, we also benefited from recognizing jealousy in its true form and how it could get even between siblings. We mentioned about certain modest dressing to avoid any type of shahwa, any type of feelings that could arise between the opposite gender. And we recognize that it's not restricted to non-siblings, as crazy as that is. because the Prophet ﷺ, which leads us into this next topic, if you will, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إن لكل أمة فتنة وفتنة أمتي المال. Actually, I'm using a different one. He said that narration, just to translate, he said every single ummah was given a fitna, and the fitna of my ummah was wealth. But actually, we also saw how Cain was giving very cheaply, right? He was really being stuck to it, if you will, and that really hasn't changed much, especially with us today when we're donating and other things like that. But in more specific, the Prophet ﷺ said about the men, he said, I don't leave you with any greater fitna than the fitna of women. And these are a tactic that the devil, he's been using from the beginning of time. After Cain kills his brother, Adam is obviously heart-struck. He's in a lot of sorrow. He's still preaching to his kids about Allah and teaching them so much. So Allah Azza wa Jal gives him a child named Sheath. Sheath. And Sheath in its root word means Allah's gift. So some of the scholars said that actually Sheath alayhi salam, and he was a prophet, and actually Sheath was a Nabi. And he said that, they said in particular, it was perhaps a gift to replace his murdered son, Abel. It was a gift to replace his murdered son, Abel. And so what we learn about Sheath is not that much, but actually quite beneficial. The Prophet ﷺ, he said about the Prophet Sheath that Allah sent down 104 Psalms. This is kind of like ilm, Psalms, and Dawood was given some as well. And he said of which 50 were given to Sheath alone. So you can imagine the kind of knowledge that Sheath was given and the kind of ilm he was preaching. So you see, it was, and you might say, well, I don't understand what buildings and what this and what that. You see, we are trained to think that prehistoric or pre-modern times, they were very dumb, very ape-like kind of business. Inventing the wheel was a big deal and things like that. So that's how we're taught. So we have to kind of try to be fair, to look at both sides and both arguments, try to wipe that, not wipe it, but try to start from a clean slate. And say, okay, what if it wasn't the case? What if people were a lot smarter back then and knowledge continued to diminish, and actually, in fact, we may be less knowledgeable than the people, 30,000 years ago or whatnot. If you stick with that mentality, maybe you see history from a different perspective. I love this one statement that one university professor in Toronto, he said, history is, in fact, his story. His story. His story. It's written by a person from their perspective and how they want to ink history for people to remember it. And so that's why you'll even see two sides to everything, right? We even have in the United States an American proverb that would say, for example, one people's terrorist is another people's hero. That's an American proverb, because there's always two sides to every story. So here, let's look at this. The Prophet ﷺ said, and we mentioned this, that when Adam was on his deathbed, he asked Sheath to go get him fruit from Jannah, and by the time he left, we mentioned that last time, he had already passed away. He met Jibreel on the path. We talked about that, right? And how he met Jibreel along the path. Jibreel said, where are you going? He said, I'm looking for the fruits of paradise for my father. He said, it has been ordained, Allah has ordained that only the inhabitants of paradise will eat from it, not outside of it. So he said, and by the way, go back, your father has already passed. So Jibreel comes back with them, with angels, and he buries Adam, and he shrouds him, and he buries him in his spot, because he says, obviously, a prophet is buried exactly where they are, and their body doesn't deteriorate. So somebody might say, well, where is his body? We could say, Allahu A'lam. We don't know. And know something also. There's certain part of it that we have to say Allahu A'lam. It's not like we've discovered it at all. But there is rumors that, not rumors, there is a hadith at the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, the Khalifa, one of the righteous predecessors after the Prophet ﷺ, predecessors, and so they discovered a body that was not deteriorated but has been there in a very long time in the areas of Jerusalem. And so this news reached Umar, and he said that in fact this is perhaps the body of the Prophet Daniel. So he told them in the middle of the night, the hikmah of Umar, just so you know, so no bid'ah and shirk and all this business happens. He says in the middle of the night, dig up multiple graves, so that nobody knows where it is. And he said he said during the day, dig up multiple graves, scatter them throughout the area. He said, and then in the middle of the night, take his body and go bury it. This is an amana that you carry this out, and they did it. And so they couldn't relocate that body until this day. And so you know, obviously, so that they don't sit there worshiping some dead body of a prophet. And so that's just some, you know, something interesting that some people have actually seen it. Nonetheless, so we learn all of that. However, after now Adam's death, Sheeth has become the new Khalifa on earth. New Khalifa on earth. And so the story of the first zina actually takes place at the time of Sheeth, which is quite sad, but we can benefit from it by learning how to avoid such a thing. So the people have kind of split. And somebody could argue, was that Cain taking some people and moving them and, you know, starting some progeny out in another area, and Sheeth with his people up in the high areas of the mountains? Maybe, we don't know that part, Allahu A'lam. But as far as we know, that's part of the sunnah that actually Sheikh Kamal al-Makki taught us in Stories of the Prophets when it was here some time ago, that the people of the mountains were Sheeth's people, so in the kind of the higher areas, and the only small fitna that they had is that their women were not that pretty, but the men were extremely handsome. And the people that are in the lower area of the land, they actually, the women, it was quite the opposite. The women were absolutely stunning, and the males were not that great looking. Not that great looking. So what happens is, after some time, this was their sharia, that they could not mix, actually. That they simply could not mix. So you might say, well, wait, that's weird. Why? We could then pose that same question to our sharia today. Why are you able to marry a mushrik, person who's making partners with Allah from Ahl al-Kitab, from the Christians or the Jewish traditions, but you can't marry somebody from a Buddhist tradition? You see, you can pose the same question. Or someone from the Chinese ancestry belief. You see, you can ask the same question. Allah Azza wa Jal has His hikmah, has His wisdom, and we don't know everything. And I'm sure maybe some scholars have mentioned some benefits behind that, but nothing concrete from Allah or His Prophet as to why. But these are some of the things that Allah Azza wa Jal ordained it that way. Some things we can see benefits from, right? And you guys know them. I don't need to go over them for the sake in the brevity of time. So what happens then, Iblis is a very patient individual. And the reason is because he knows for a 100% fact, he's not going to be perished, he's not going to be tortured, he's not going to get his punishment until the day of judgment. So he knows he's living until the earth is coming to an end. He knows that for a fact. And you'll even notice this with the Prophet Nuh and how long he waited to arise shirk at this time. So what he does is he starts introducing wind instruments to the people of those lower lands, those beautiful women. So he introduces wind instruments, anything you can imagine in that case. So they start making these kind of, they start singing with the music and whatnot, until one time there's one of the men from Sheeth's people, and he's towards the edge of where, his area, if you will, and he hears this sound. So he approaches them, goes there, and he finds this absolutely stunning women, and they're just with instruments, and he's like, wow, what on earth have we been missing out on? He goes back, and it's how it is. And the sad part of it still exists today. It's so sickening that in Manhattan, it's so silly and so immature and sad that there are men who have developed techniques to stare at a woman, her figure, without getting caught. Very stupid. They talk about it at lunch, and that's how I hear it. And they're all, sharing this innovative way. Oh, I do this, and they do things with their phone, and somebody does a neck stretch, and just it just shows to how this fitna is always going to exist. It's not going to change. So he goes back and tells his pals, this fellow from Sheeth's group, And then they're all now talking about the women down there. We don't have these kind of women up here. They don't exist. You know, it's kind of like going from NJIT to Rutgers. No, I'm just kidding. I'm really kidding. I went to NJIT and I love this school. Alhamdulillah. I'm joking, you guys know that. They're all gonna kill me after this, you know that, right? So, it's a big deal, right? So what happens is, he goes and tells his people, then a bunch of these guys go down there, they hear it's a party down there, and all of the sudden, the formula for zina has taken place. You got beautiful women, and then Iblis introduced these blowing instruments, so they're partying it up. The hijab's out the window. We talked about hijab, we're here to party. Girls know what I'm talking about when they go to bridal showers. We talked about this. But now you introduce men to that party, and now you got a recipe for disaster. Oh, it's super disaster. It's going down. And so then what happens is the first act of zina takes place at the time of sheath. Absolutely horrendous. And you look at the following, that the technique that actually happens is the same marketing technique that Iblis still uses upon us today. And it's to objectify women, and to also ruin the heart by allowing people to waste time and not allow them to focus on the adhkar of Allah, the remembrance of Allah, by introducing them to music. You know, I mean, I see it many times that some people always ask us, you know, they ask a lot of our teachers and they'll say, you know, I don't have khushu' in the salah. I don't have that tranquility, that connection with Allah when I'm praying. Well, that's because before you went into the masjid, you had it on, you know, Z100 or Hot 97 or whatever people listen to today. And so, you know, the imam's sitting here and he's in the middle of his khutbah or in the middle of his salah, and he's saying, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And it's in the middle of the salah and he's reciting, and all you're doing is just bobbling up and down because you just listened to, I don't know, whoever today. I don't need. If I was named somebody, I'd probably predate myself. So I'd rather not. You know, who's in today. But so my point is that Imam al-Bukhari said it best. He said that the music and this kind of singing and the Quran, they cannot live in the same heart. It's not possible. It's absolutely not possible. And it really ruins your heart. You know, I used to see when I was in college, some of my classmates, girls and boys, they would go in their room for like 5 or 6 hours straight and be in some emo, depressed mode, listen to the same song on repeat. What on earth? And that's because what? Somebody got dumped. It just didn't work out the way they wanted, and they're just dreaming about, I don't know who, you know, Darla from, you know, the Rascals. If you remember that, you should watch it. I like 90s movies. They were a lot cleaner. But anyhow, so then you come back and you say, okay, that this is actually a major fitna. That the women are one thing, and so we can learn a lot from there to guard your gaze, ghud al-basar, to guard yourselves. And that doesn't mean that you're just looking down. We mentioned that obviously. That means that you know that if there's some girls in the, you know, in the area, that, you know, you just go where you need to go and you're not staring them down. And then also on the music side, you know, there's a difference. So somebody asked after when we gave one of these lectures, there's a difference between listening to music and being in the presence where music is existing, where music is being played. Like, let me give you an example. If you went down to the first floor in the campus center, they got some jam going on right now, you know, and that big, massive speaker. And so if you were studying down there, you ask yourself, you just found a spot to study in a crowded campus, or do you like this music and you said, oh, I could focus more. You see the key difference? One, you found a place to study and you're just there to study. And the other one, you said, oh, that's my jam right there. I gotta be here. So hey, you know, I'll be over here and I'll do my homework here. Imam Malik rahimahullah, he said, if you're in the middle of a gathering and it has music playing in the background and you start to enjoy that music, it is wajib upon you to leave. Wow. But if you were just passing by, or you went to a restaurant and it happens to be in the background, and 99% of the time you don't hear it anyway, it's loud and you're talking to friends and family or whatever, then that's absolutely fine, right? So you understand the difference? Hopefully we understand the difference. So then we actually recognize the following also, that this kind of music ruins the heart and it also moves you away from the adhkar of Allah. It moves you away from saying things like Subhanallah bihamdihi, Subhanallah al-Azim. If you got, and this doesn't require much effort or time, and you can do this 24 hours, 7 days a week, no matter what the state of purity you're in, sisters or not, or brothers. Subhanallah bihamdihi, Subhanallah al-Azim. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned these two things. He said are so heavy on the scale and very easy on the tongue. They said, Ya Rasulullah, who's the best amongst us? Who's the best amongst us? He said, the one who says Subhanallah bihamdihi, Subhanallah al-Azim 100 times. The companions aren't settled there. They compete with one another. يسارعون في الخيرات, to compete with one another for good deeds. They said, Ya Rasulullah, who's better than those people that say it 100 times? He said, whoever says it more than that. Right? So you kind of have like your secret number. You don't want to tell anybody. Man, think about if you just went to 101, how many people you passed. So I was like, yeah, well, I'm going to do 102. You see, then it just, don't go crazy now, because there's a few people out there that are up to 10,000, and we're not there. You know what I'm talking about, right? Without mentioning groups or anything like that. But, reasonable. Nonetheless, how about Subhanallah al-Azim wa bihamdihi? Subhanallah al-Azim wa bihamdihi. You see a reverse, shorter version. Subhanallah al-Azim wa bihamdihi. It will actually plant you a tree in paradise. Subhanallah al-Azim wa bihamdihi. So think about it. And why am I saying this? Because a lot of times, you sit here, you go to high school, you become valedictorian, salutatorian, try your best, get yourself a full ride. Then you go to college for 4 or 5 years, depending on which one you go to. And then some other people who for some reason are crazy go to medical school, but that's okay. And then they're 35 and they're gray hair, and then they look to get married, but that's okay. And may Allah help all of you be successful. But you do all of that for what? I hope if you're in the medical field, you're doing it to help people. Sure. That was 30 years ago. Today, we know that they start at 200 whatever a year. But nonetheless, you fast forward, and you do that to kind of build yourself a nice, comfortable life in the dunya. So then, if you could just be planting all these beautiful landscaping all around your house, why wouldn't you? Subhanallah al-Azim wa bihamdihi. How many trees could you have planted? What if you said, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah? The Prophet said, this statement, remembrance of Allah, that there is no deity or might except the powers with Allah, then this gives you a treasure from the treasures of paradise. We don't know what, but a treasure from the treasures of paradise. Then you scale back and you're like, man, just on these three alone, you recognize how many opportunities you're missing out on, because you wanted to listen to the prank call that they do. They still do that? 1-800-G100? Don't go. They still do, right? I was sucker for those. I'll be honest with you. They're funny, some of them. But nonetheless, don't go listening to that for that. You could go on YouTube or something. You could find them. But they're really funny. I'm serious. So anyhow, what I'm trying to tell you is just think about how much time you're wasting if you had kept it on and you're just listening to that and your heart is going nowhere, versus how much investment you could be making in the akhirah. So now I'm just going to go over a small story that the Prophet ﷺ told us about a righteous individual that was also succumbed to the plan and the trick of shaitan. Because a lot of us here in this room, as unfortunate as it may seem, we think that there's no chance that I'm going to be falling into the sin of adultery. There's no way. It's just not me. It's not how I was raised. So the Prophet ﷺ told us, well, not the Prophet, more from the Israeliyat, which is the people of the book. But the scholars mentioned it because there's no contradiction here. And we can benefit from it. From a man at the time of Bani Israel, and his name was Barsisa. And he was a righteous worshiper of Allah, an avid righteous worshiper. You may say that this person, Barsisa, was much better than us, because he was known amongst his people as a very righteous individual worshiper. That's kind of like going to, somebody local in your MSA and say, oh, but this person, mashallah. And you just always use that happen. Oh, mashallah, mashallah. And you keep on saying that because that of their quality. They try really hard. They try to help people. And, things like that of that nature become known amongst people for those qualities. May Allah Azza wa Jalla allow us to benefit from that without any of the negative aspects of it. So he is tested. How so? There were 3 men in his town, and they were summoned for war. jihad has been always from the time Adam all the way till the end of time, and that's a good thing to stop people from being oppressed. People, things like what's going on in Yemen and all these other places, and Burma, may Allah help them, Ya Rab. So you look at all of this, and so they had to go. The only small issue was that they had a sister who no one could look after, that they were looking after her. So they looked around, they found no one better or more suitable to look after their sister while they're away on this mission than this guy Belsisa, this righteous man of the town, worshiping Allah all the time, known for his righteousness and whatnot. So he says, absolutely no. There's no chance I'm watching this girl. No chance whatsoever. So they try to convince him, didn't work. They go and they looked around, they couldn't find anyone else. So they come back to him again, they said, please, this is an amana, this is a trust, we have no other option. So long story short, and not long story short, he finally accepts. He says, fine, but put her over there in a separate facility out there so that I don't have to travel, and she doesn't have to travel to see me and anything like that. He says, okay. So what happens is they go to their journey, he brings her food and whatnot, he brings it, knocks on the door, and he goes back, he runs away. After a while, they said, Iblis comes to him and he starts making waswasa to show you khutwat al-shaytan. Allah just said, avoid the steps that the devil takes in order to push you away from the sirat al-mustaqim, the straight path. So he comes and he makes waswasa to him. He whispers to him. You see, this is the things that he keeps on doing. Waswasa. He keeps on whispering these bad thoughts and ideas. So what does he do? He says, listen, isn't that kind of rude? How you knocking on? Was she like an animal? It's kind of rude. You're knocking on the door and you run away. You leave food there. Have some respect. She's human, So what you do is knock, hand her the food, and then go. So it can't be such a bad idea. And I hear this all the time. You see, I hear this especially some of the brothers, after some of the lectures that we'd give, and there's still little group studies that they'll have their excuses for. We'll get into that later. So what happens is he goes and he comes back, and then Iblis comes back to him after a while. He says, it's been there. Her brother's been gone for some time. It's not like today where you could just book a flight and then you come back within the same day. You could literally go to Chicago and back. You wouldn't even know. Nobody would even know you left, Jersey. That's how travel has changed. Back then, you were on some sort of animal. Took a long time, or depending on where the mission was. And so, anyhow, they're taking a lot longer. He says, "Listen, she's been alone. She hasn't even talked to anybody this entire time." But wait. Look how he tries to give him good advice. He mixes it in. He says, "Well, you don't want to talk to her up front. That's too close. Give her the food and welcome her from the roof. So talk to her from up there." How's everything? How's your day? Do you need anything? Everything all right up there? So that happens. That works for a while. But then Iblis comes back to him, does waswasa to him again, and he says, hey, how on earth are you going to let her shout to you like that in front of all these people? That's not respectful. A girl shouting from a building up there, or from wherever, 1 story high. You should that's ridiculous. Just go, at least just sit just by the door and then have that conversation. So there's no shouting. Well, that makes perfect sense. It's to sutra for the girl, to protect her modesty or go sit at the doorstep. So he does that for a while, until obviously you see where this is going. Then after a while, they get closer, and he says, well, why would you hand her the food? You're already talking to her. And just go have a meal. Just go have a meal with her. It's not a big deal, So he says, yeah, we're having this kind of conversation. He goes in there. And now this is the detrimental part, because the Prophet ﷺ said that if a man and a woman, who are not mahram to each other, are alone, then the shaitan is the third. Never forget that, by the way. If a man and a woman are alone in an area, okay, the shaitan is the third. So obviously, things get sparking, and all of a sudden, he leaves. But he comes back that same night, and he kissed her, and that just led into the worst scenario possible. He actually made zina with her, but the worst part that happened is actually she becomes pregnant. She becomes pregnant with a child, and after this child is born, it hits him. He's like, wait a minute. Iblis comes back to him. He says, Balsisa, what have you done? You're the righteous guy. They trusted you with their sister, and you slept with her, and you impregnated her. This is a disaster. You know the only way to clean this problem up? You gotta kill the kid. You gotta take the kid out. So he convinces him enough that he goes and he murders the baby. He murders the child. Goes back home. Iblis comes back to him. He thought it was there. That was it. No. He said, do you think that a mother will stay quiet when you murdered her child? When her brothers get back, oh, she's going to rat you out. She's going to say, you know what, you slept with me, you killed my kid, it's over for you. There's only one other solution. You got to kill her. You got to kill this lady, you got to kill this girl, you got to bury her somewhere in the house so they don't find her, and then go make up a grave in the graveyard and say she died from some local sickness or some local disease. Perfect plan. Can't go wrong with it. So he actually executes that plan, and he goes back to his little hut, worshiping Allah, and then, or at least for what he thinks he's doing anyway. So their brothers come back, he breaks down the news to them, and they're all heartbroken. They're all heartbroken, in sorrow and crying. And he said, come, I'll take you to the grave. He takes them to the grave, and then he walks away, and they're just crying and crying. And when they go to sleep, they all wake up. Allah Azza wa Jal gave them all a similar dream. And that in that dream, it was that they were told that her body is not buried. Her body is buried in the house that she was staying in, that you had rented or whatever. So, well, they all woke up, and the younger brother, and this is kind of maybe sometimes with some of the younger siblings, they're very passionate, stands up and says, I had the weirdest dream. And he shares his dream amongst his brothers, and they said, I had a similar dream. They all mentioned about the same thing. So he said, that's it, I'm going over there. So the older brother says, no. He said, that's not from the etiquettes of Islam that you go and accuse someone without evidence. Back and forth. He says, the younger brother's telling him, how is that just coincidental that we all have the same dream? At minimum, let's just go dig it up. Let's just go dig up that room and see if there's anything there. So they go and they in that house and they dig it up and they find the corpse of their sister with the child buried next to her. So this causes a major problem. They bring this up to the town, and so in the middle of the entire town, they're going to execute this guy, Belsis. They're going to execute him. He murdered. Oh, he didn't leave what's left. He zina, murder, killed a kid. It's just he ruined an amana, a trust, just all across the board. He checked every box, for crying out loud. So then what happens? Iblis doesn't stop there. You see, that's the problem. He does not stop there. He's about to put to the death penalty in front of the middle of the town, and Iblis approaches him again. He approaches him one more time. He said, I was the one who convinced you to do all of that. He said, what do you mean? He said, look what you've done. You were a righteous worshiper. Then I told you that she was lonely, and I told you that's not respectful, and I told you this, and you listened. Now who's left? Now who are you going to rely upon? People are going to kill you. These Muslim brothers of yours are going to kill you. He says, so help me. He says, I'll help you, but there's only one way. He says, what's that? He says, you make one sajda to me, and I'll get you out of this situation. So he makes a sajda to Iblis, committing shirk. You see, he didn't start at a major sin. He got him to make shirk, and then he was killed. The last thing, he died as a mushrik, a righteous person known amongst all of the people of the town, to show you that power that women have. Not in a bad way, obviously. To show you that how susceptible you are to succumbing to that desire that you're essentially born with, that you're created with. But Allah Azza warned you about that. How to keep your distance, how to have a proper etiquette of communication in organizations and things like that, respectfully, so that you can carry on doing good things. And so this is one of the things that you can benefit from greatly, is that one, shaitan doesn't come to you immediately and tell you, oh, make shirk with Allah, make partners with Allah, say as a kid, say Iblis, he helps me, or anything like that. He comes in steps. And the thing is, we keep thinking that we're doing the right thing, when in reality, you may not be. You may not be. And you have to ask yourself, does this violate the advice that the Prophet ﷺ gave us? Because if it does, it's not going to lead to something good. It really is not. And that's something you have to be very careful about. So, two things that I want you to take away from this particular night is, one, is your focus, I need razor sharp focus, especially from the guys, on how you deal with the opposite gender. And number two is see if you can remove another tactic that the devil uses to remove you away from the worship of Allah, which is music. Try to get it out of your system. Really, you'll focus more, you'll think about things to invent. I'm serious, by the way. I know somebody who stopped listening to music, and all of a sudden he tells me it's just quiet in the car now. And so I start thinking a lot more. Like different things about while I'm driving around and while I'm on the subway and how I can improve different things. So he emails himself different inventions and whatnot. I said, well, that's awesome. Somebody else said, well, now I started memorizing Quran because while I'm on the train or anything like that, I have my phone. Before I used to have 5 million songs on it and they just hit random or whatever. And now I don't have that anymore. So now I just started memorizing Juz' Amma, the last Juz' in the Quran, which is pretty, not that difficult to memorize. So you see, you can be utilizing your time in a much more beneficial manner if you just don't follow the steps that the shaitan uses, his tactics, in order to move us away. And the reason that these stories reached us by the Prophet ﷺ, by some of the scholars, by some of the people of the book, is so that we do not fall in the same trap. We do not fall in the same trap. There are so many disastrous stories that I know, may Allah protect us, that are happening amongst our own Muslim communities that are, trying to hide doing sexual activity and all this other stuff. May Allah protect us. And you have to be very careful about that. And you see, try to ask yourself what steps to avoid falling into those mistakes. May Allah protect us. So that's really it.
Yes,
Yeah.
the story of Barsisa. This was from the Israeliyat.
Yes. Yep. It's mentioned in Tafsir ibn Kathir. It's from the people of the book. And the Prophet ﷺ said, peace and blessings be upon him, that if a story reaches you from the people of the book, which are the Jewish or the Christian people, he said, if they do not contradict the religion, then do not deny them or take them. You could use them for benefit, but if they contradict the religion, then you leave them. Then you just reject them. Okay? Yes?
With the story of Rashisa, after he committed fornication, he was like very deep into the wrong. What would the steps be for him to return back to Allah?
Well, for us, we know what would need to happen. If someone fornicated in our religion, you just go to the judge and say, kill me. You know I'm joking. Yeah, exactly. What are we talking about? Of course I'm joking. No, absolutely not. First of all, what judge is going to do that? Number two, he's just like, dang, I'm dead. Not hopefully, right? Not you. No, I'm just kidding. No, so if someone fornicated in our religion, one, if Allah hid that sin for you, then you keep it hidden and you make major tawbah for the rest of your life. Make major tawbah and then move on from it. That's it. Don't ever speak about it, anything like that. Got it? And that's the general rule. If Allah hid something for you, any sin, not just fornication, drinking alcohol, clubbing, help me out, whatever else is out there. There's all sorts of interesting things happening. So if Allah hid all of that for you, then you keep it hidden. You thank Allah that He kept it hidden for you. And you meet Allah Azza wa Jal hoping that He forgave you for it. Hoping. Because Allah could hold you accountable for it on the Day of Judgment, and He could also pardon you for it. But part of the tawbah is that Allah mentioned in the Quran that if you come, or Hadith Qudsi, if, O son of Adam, you come with ijbal, mountains of bad deeds, then know that I'm Al-Ghafur Ar-Rahim. Then know that He is the all-forgiving, the all-merciful Lord. So it's never ever too late to turn back to Allah. But keep it hidden. Don't sit there, go and tell your friend, there's this thing that I'm just feeling terrible about. Or you're going to go and ask for a girl, hand. And she says, I need to know. Did you do it? You said, did what? Are you a virgin? and you come back and you're like, all right, here it is. This is what happened. No, you simply say, look, this is the person you're asking about right now. I'm not going to sit here and give you my life history. Alhamdulillah, I'm the person that's standing in front of you. I pray 5 times a day. I don't go clubbing. I don't go dating girls or any of that business. That's who's here for you today. I'm not here to get a history lesson of everything you've ever done or anything I've ever done. Usually when somebody asks that, they're a little insecure about that themselves, just so you're aware. May Allah protect us. Yeah.
So the lady who came to the Prophet ﷺ, who'd fornicated and she
Mhm.
told him, and
Yeah.
he basically tried to avoid it, but she kept insisting until
Mhm.
they did the had. Was that the wrong thing for her to do?
No, so not that the wrong thing for her to do. The Prophet ﷺ, some of the scholars even counted like up to 9 or 11, I can't remember, times that the Prophet ﷺ kind of turned her away to hope that she would just make tawbah and live with that the rest of her life. A person who really made tawbah from that, it burns inside. It really burns inside, and it hurts them to know that they've gotten to such an extent that they did that kind of sin. So what she wanted was to be guaranteed. Here's the difference. She wanted to be guaranteed expiation from that sin. To be guaranteed is what she went through. And I tell you the truth, every single time I read that narration, I break down crying. It's one of the hardest narrations I've ever read in my entire life. Very difficult decision that she made. Today, there's no Sharia. We live in the United States. We live in Jersey. I don't care how righteous your cousin is. He ain't the judge. And you don't go to him and just break down and say, give me the lashes and send me going. Send me on my way to meet Allah. This is not how it works, right? There's a system, and here we live in this land, and there is no option to do that anyway. But what she did at her time, at the Prophet ﷺ's time, is something that the Prophet ﷺ said she is so rewarded for. It's a very difficult decision to make. But he gave her many options to just repent from that sin and kind of live with it. Hurts a lot of people.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
You said when you're hearing a music that you're attracted to, you should distance yourself right away. Can you expand on that a little bit?
So this is the fatwa of Imam Malik, rahimahullah. So one time Ibn Umar, radiallahu anhu, there was a band of music, caravan or whatever, parade or I don't know what it was. So they were passing by and they had musical instruments and they were playing it. And so he plugged his fingers in his ear and he went like that, and he told the companion next to him, he said, tell me when they're gone. So he went like that, or when they're stopped. So he gave him a signal, he said they stopped. He said, ask me why I did what I did. He said, why did you do what you do? Why did you do what you did? He said, I wouldn't have done it unless I saw the Prophet ﷺ doing it. So this is to understand that it is from the Sunnah. It is a higher degree, a higher standard to reach, that you don't even listen to it. See, the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't even listen to it. That's a standard. That's from the Sunnah. Are you sinning? There's a difference between doing something that is you're getting rewarded for versus something that you're getting punished for. If you literally plugged your ears, you didn't want to hear any music, you're getting rewarded for that. If you were sitting down and you're in the campus center, and then I don't know that fool guy who comes on and party things, and he comes on and you're like, oh man, this is it. This is my jam. I love it, and it's ruining your heart. It is better for you to protect your heart. He's giving you advice to get out of there, to just go and come back in maybe 5 minutes or something. Go use the bathroom. Hey, do you mind watching my laptop for me? And then just go and come back. So it's to not ruin your heart. Because, even a lot of times, and it's true. There's a lot of music that your heart just becomes attracted to. And I hear it sometimes. And it's unfortunate. We just got to try to avoid it like the plague, so your heart doesn't get ruined. And I'll tell you the truth, people who listen to music, it's very difficult for them to listen to Quran. Very, very difficult. And that's unilateral across the board. Everyone has told me that. And that's why they go into Ramadan and they come out of it complaining. We have the most boring qari on earth. I think you brought the guy from India and Egypt and they gave him 10 grand to read for you and you didn't like it? I mean, what else do we want? See? It's the problem. It's not the reciter, it's the person behind the reciter. Got that point? Or no?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, you talked about Hazrat Adam's the second prophet and how the first zina was committed. So what did he do when he found out? Do we know?
We do not. We do not know.
We don't know.
Allahu A'lam. But maybe it was flogging, maybe it wasn't. Don't forget that Islamically, the Sharia for someone who's not married is being whipped. The one who was married and did adultery, fornication, then it's whipped and killed and stoned to death. And hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he said it is better for a people to carry out the hudud of Allah, the prescribed punishments of Allah, which are very few, count them on one hand if you will, than for it to rain on that community for 40 nights. And in retrospect, that's literally money falling from the sky for 40 nights. Just imagine just $100 bills just falling for 40 nights straight. It is better for a community, it is better for a nation to carry those out because they're to benefit people. They're to benefit everyone, right? You know, you could just imagine how crazy it is even right now. You know, the pedophiles are currently making their case that they're born that way and they deserve to have their love if they consent. They've actually put a proposal together that they want to be recognized so that they can be with their true love if they consent. How about that? You know, there's no hold barred when you call it, well, I'm free to do whatever I want to do as long as you don't bother me, right? That's a really twisted way of thinking. Anyhow, answer your question? Yeah, we don't know. Allahu A'lam. Any other questions from maybe sisters? Going once, twice, sold. أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لكم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Next week will be our final week, inshallah. Huh?
That's too bad.
Well, you know, for this semester, and then inshallah we'll look at something for the one after that. Shake this guy out.